welcome to another episode of Accessibility. It's a show on YouTube where I talk about the video game industry, accessibility, and representation. Basically, how can we help more people to play games, and more people to see themselves in the games they play? I'm your host, Laura. I'm a white woman with bright blue hair, shaved on one side, wearing a plain black dress. If you're a Pokémon fan, there are probably few things as exciting to you right now as the imminent release of Pokémon Legends Arceus, the action-oriented gotta-catch-em-all set in the past that has been shrouded in a lot of mystery in the run-up to its release. Thanks to a street date broken copy of Pokémon Legends Arceus ending up in my possession, I have spent about 45 hours playing through the game at the time of recording this video. It'll probably be considerably more by the time that this video goes up. While I haven't seen absolutely everything that this massive game has to offer, I have played through the main game up to the credits and a decent chunk of post-game content, and as a result, I feel pretty confident that I can talk about this game's level of difficulty, as well as its level of accessibility support. So today, on Accessibility, we're going to be talking about Pokémon Legends Arceus. We're going to be talking about some of the new mechanics introduced in this game that may make the game more difficult than other Pokémon games in the past for certain disabled players. We're going to talk about what settings exist in the game's settings menu in order to tweak the way the game plays, and we're going to talk about the level of difficulty in the main story and the level of difficulty in the post-game. Let's start off by talking, in broad strokes, about what Pokémon Legends Arceus is actually like to play. Pokémon Legends Arceus is, at its core, a Pokémon game, but with its focus shifted away from turn-based battles, they're still there, they're just not the focus, and more towards the series' original tagline of gotta catch 'em all. In a formula that feels very heavily inspired by titles like Monster Hunter, players depart a hub town on missions to one of 5 large hub areas, which, while not a true single open world, are all broad in scope. Each area feels more sprawling and open-ended than those in comparable title Monster Hunter Rise, and seem very much built with the design philosophy of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. While some invisible walls are eventually introduced to zone in areas, generally speaking, players are free to wander to their heart's content, exploring large areas and catching Pokémon. Unlike previous Pokémon games, Legends Arceus requires players to complete their Pokédex not just by catching one of every Pokémon, but instead requires more detailed research of each species to complete its encyclopedia entry, as the game is set in the distant past. Players will need to complete species-specific tasks, such as catching a set number of creatures without being spotted, or seeing them use a specific move a certain number of times, in order to research the Pokémon to completion. To facilitate this increased hunting of each Pokémon, Legends Arceus adds a variety of new gameplay options, as well as generally increasing the pace of play. Players can crouch and hide in tall grass in order to sneak up on Pokémon unseen, attempting to aim and throw a Pokéball at the creature and catch it without engaging in a traditional turn-based battle. Catch shots are altered by the type of ball that's been used and whether you can hit the Pokemon from behind unseen. If you fail the catch, you can instead throw out a Pokemon for a traditional turn-based battle to weaken them and catch them that way. Beyond that, the game also features a number of other action elements. While some of them are fairly simple, such as rideable Pokemon, others are more complex, with greater punishment for failure. While out and about hunting Pokémon, players can be attacked by wild Pokémon that act aggressively. While the player character does not have a traditional health meter, taking too many attacks from Pokémon on the overworld will cause the player's screen to change colour, with the player eventually being knocked unconscious. The player has a dodge roll mapped to the Y button, but if they fail to dodge enough attacks and are knocked out, they will respawn at a camp, missing a portion of their items at random. While these can be returned to the player if they play online and another player in the world retrieves what they dropped, there is no way to turn off this penalty for failing to dodge overworld attacks. The peak of action gameplay difficulty are the game's new frenzied noble boss fights, where players must, to progress the story, dodge large-scale attacks from a boss monster, throwing calming bombs at them in the safe windows between attacks, and eventually engaging in turn-based battles when openings arise. These boss fights may not be up there with Dark Souls bosses in terms of action gameplay difficulty, but they're certainly not easy. Most of these boss fights I lost at least once while I was learning their attack patterns, as an experienced player of Dark Souls style games, and there is no option to avoid these entirely. You can, if you're knocked out by one of these bosses, choose to keep your progress upon death. In quarter of a health bar chunks, it's not precise. You can do this without penalty, rather than restarting, if you want to brute force your way through one of these boss fights. But these are designed to be difficult encounters, and the option of continuing from where you died mid-fight with the health bar still partially decreased is not well telegraphed by the game. You do not lose items for being knocked out during these boss fights, and you can retry them straight away without backtracking, thankfully. With all that out the way, let's dig into how accessible or not this newest Pokémon title is to play, outside of those boss fights. For those with difficulty reading, either through poor eyesight, language barriers, learning disabilities, age, or other conditions, Pokémon Legends Arceus is going to be more difficult to play than previous entries in the Pokémon series, in part due to its increased focus on reading comprehension. Each species of Pokémon has its own unique requirements to complete its Pokédex entry, and checking what those are will require more reading comprehension than hit the thing in front of you with your strongest attack. Add on to this the increased focus on elements like crafting and completing specific side quests with unique completion requirements, and this is a game that will not be right for everyone. If you've got a youngster in your life with ADHD, for example, who enjoys button mashing through Pokémon, but doesn't like it when they have to stop and read, or the idea that progression might require patiently waiting in some bushes for an opportunity to stealth attack, this is going to be a hard sell. While the game features third-person shooter-style aiming and throwing mechanics, these are mitigated somewhat by a lock-on system. If you can get close enough to a Pokémon, and it's not running around, you can hold down a trigger to lock on your aim, throw a Pokéball, and avoid aiming controls basically altogether. There are some Pokémon that may require aiming if they're too far away to lock onto, or if they're running around a lot and the place where you're throwing them isn't where they're going to be and you have to lead your shot slightly. But generally, lock-on allows avoiding aiming mechanics in most situations. Motion controls are an option for aiming Pokeballs, but they're disabled as default and entirely optional. The main issues accessibility-wise for this game come from the move to an action gameplay approach and the punishments for failure. If you're someone with coordination issues or timing issues, or who has physical control needs when gaming, who has previously found the Pokémon games accessible because they are truly turn-based adventures, Legends Arceus might pose a problem for you. If you get ambushed by an angry Pokémon, and this will become increasingly common as you get deeper into the game, and you're struggling to run away and dodge attacks, you will get knocked unconscious and you will lose items, and those items lost may cause real progression setbacks. You can put items in a storage box so that they won't be lost upon death, but if you lose a bunch of Pokeballs and a bunch of items you'd been out collecting and a bunch of rare rewards that you've just collected and haven't had a chance to pop in a box yet, losing those items is going to be very painful. The dodge roll in Legends Arceus features a very forgiving number of invincibility frames, basically making you invincible through your whole dodge animation, as long as you dodge at the right time, but that forgiving window will be punished heavily if you fall outside of it. The punishment for failing to do a dodge correctly often leaves you too stunned to get the next dodge in properly. While Legends Arceus as default features an autosave system, you can switch the game to manual saves only. By regularly manually saving, you can reset your game if needed to avoid losing items upon being knocked out, but an option to opt out of that system would save a lot of stress for disabled players. There are also certain maneuvers which expect a high degree of input complexity, such as jumping out of the water on the back of a water-type ride Pokemon, doing a double jump, aiming a Pokeball down at the water in slow motion, locking onto a target, and throwing the ball before you land. These kinds of maneuvers are not mandatory, but they're encouraged and difficult technically to pull off. In terms of overall game difficulty, the balancing of encounters in Legends Arceus is generally pretty well handled. Through the main story up until the credits roll, the amount of experience you will gain naturally while exploring should be roughly what is needed to complete the final fight before the credits. Fights with NPC trainers in the main game are fairly easy until the final narrative arc, with Pokémon somewhat underleveled and trainers generally leaving empty slots in their Pokémon teams. This does, however, change in the post-game, where trainers frequently have full teams of higher level Pokémon. The balancing of the game seems to be geared towards most people being able to complete the main story and see the credits roll, with a difficulty bump seen in the post-game. Additionally, many main game challenges see a difficulty bump in the post-game, so players can go and retry them with more challenge. In the main game, the primary challenge outside of the action-themed boss fights are frenzied wild Pokémon, denoted by increased size and glowing red eyes. These are generally over-leveled for the areas where they appear. They are avoidable, but available for those who are seeking additional challenge. Much of the post-game challenge scales up considerably, with NPC trainers making effective use of new mechanics to attempt to, where possible, one-shot your team of creatures. The post-game provides more challenge than I expect from a Pokémon game in general. In terms of game options, players can alter text speed, tweak camera inversion, change camera or motion sensitivity, toggle autosave, set right-click to toggle the game's HUD on or off, require a confirmation before Pokeballs are thrown in battle, sliders for audio mixing, and an option to narrow or widen the volume range of audio. For disabled players who struggle with socialising and find it difficult to find players to trade with, Legends Arceus allows you to complete the entire Pokédex solo, with new evolution items introduced to evolve Pokémon that would usually require trading to evolve. For players with memory issues, such as those with ADHD, the game contains one puzzle dungeon environment where a pen and paper will be useful, as the game otherwise wants the player to remember a, at times lengthy, series of element types in order, which can prove difficult when larger numbers of elements need remembering in order. Lastly, it's important to note that Pokémon Legends Arceus is a game built around the idea of intensive completionism, which could be a good or bad thing depending on your tastes and disabilities. As an autistic gamer, I'm personally loving the way the game is structured around obsessive completionism over time, but I recognise that this will not be a good fit for everyone, and could for some turn playing into an unpleasant compulsion. Be aware of that going in, and make a judgment based on your experience with games that feature huge sets of tasks to work on at once. While I can't confirm this is the case for all shiny Pokémon encounters in the game, if you find a frenzied Pokémon that happens to be shiny, you can manually save the game, close the game entirely, and it will still be there when you reload the game, avoiding the risk of missing a shiny encounter, or the fear of missing out, FOMO desire to catch it right then in that moment. Having now played multiple very intensive days of Pokémon Legends Arceus, I really love a lot of these changes, and personally, if I were only thinking about myself, I'd like to see a lot of these changes come to the next mainline entry, to whatever Generation 9 of Pokémon is, but I'm aware that a lot of these changes are going to push certain disabled gamers out of being able to play Pokémon, and in particular, I know I've spoken to a lot of Pokémon fans who are disabled, who specifically like this series because of its turn-based nature, because it doesn't have any of those action trappings, and I hope that those Pokémon players are not left behind if this is the direction that the future of Pokémon is going. The structure of Pokémon Legends Arceus is perfect for me, an autistic gamer with a special interest in Pokémon who will happily hyperfixate on completing a very methodical set of lists, to complete a collection, to work my way through a big Pokémon-related task. But I know that the move to action-oriented gameplay, to larger amounts of text, to stealth gameplay, to losing items on death which can push you back in terms of gameplay progression, these aren't going to be right for everyone, and I really hope that there is still a place in the Pokémon series for people who will struggle with these new gameplay mechanics from an accessibility perspective.